We've all seen it. The attention that floods in when there's distance. The energy that vanishes once you get close. The paradox of pursuit. The closer you are, the further they seem. And so a question rises, not from insecurity but from observation. Do men only desire what they can't fully have? And when they finally do, does the desire disappear? This isn't about blame. This isn't even just about gender. This is about how human longing is shaped, by absence, by distance, by the illusion of mystery. Nietzsche believed that desire cannot coexist with possession. To him, the flame of passion lives only in longing, not in holding. The moment something becomes yours, it begins to fade. Not because it's lost value, but because it has lost mystery. Esther Perel, however, sees it differently. She says the modern man confuses intimacy with confinement. He chases, not because he wants the person, but because he fears stillness. In pursuit, he feels powerful. In closeness, he feels trapped. So today we ask, is desire built on distance? Or is it destroyed by fear of presence? Is this a masculine pattern, or a universal flaw in how we handle emotional closeness? This isn't just about romance. It's about the architecture of desire itself. What we want, why we want it, and why so many of us pull away the moment we touch what we once chased. Welcome to the thinking war. Desire, in its rawest form, thrives on the tension between what is wanted and what is withheld. When something is slightly out of reach, it becomes luminous. It projects dreams, fantasies, depths we imagine, not necessarily depths that exist. And once it's close, once it's available, open, clear, the projection fades, and we are left with reality. Unfiltered, unromanticized. True. Is it the fault of the person who gave themselves? Or is it the result of chasing a version of desire that was never meant to be fulfilled? We must ask ourselves uncomfortable questions. Do we love people, or the version of them we create while pursuing? Does the end of pursuit always mark the beginning of disinterest? And most importantly, is this behavior personal or patterned? In this war of ideas, we turn to two opposing minds. One, a philosopher who saw desire as a flame that dies the moment it finds oxygen. The other, a therapist who believes closeness, for many, is not home, but danger. Before we place judgment, we must understand the architecture of this tragedy. Because until we do, we're not chasing love. We're chasing the high of the hunt. And what happens when that high wears off? Today, we begin where most stories end. At the moment after the kiss, when the fire starts to fade. To Nietzsche, desire was never about possession. It was about tension, distance, mystery. He believed that the moment something becomes attainable, it becomes ordinary. Not because it loses its essence, but because it loses the illusion we've built around it. Desire is projection, not presence. And what we project, we cherish. What we hold, we start to measure. Nietzsche did not see this as a moral failure, but as a truth of the human condition. We don't long for what is ours. We long for what escapes us, because in the distance, we are free to imagine perfection. He would argue, that which we cannot touch retains its divinity. The unreachable remains sacred, precisely because it never had to prove itself real. And when it comes to love, Nietzsche saw romance not as a peaceful union, but as a battlefield of idealizations. We fall in love not with the person, but with the version of them that remains partially hidden. With every unanswered question, every unpredictable gesture, every hesitation, our desire grows stronger. But once intimacy brings light into every shadow, the mystery dies. And so does the hunger. This is not cynicism. It is recognition. Recognition that our minds, more than our hearts, decide who we chase and who we ignore once they stop running. To Nietzsche, the tragedy of love is this. The very act of attaining it may destroy the thing we desired. And if that's true, then perhaps the solution isn't to become less available. Perhaps it's to understand why the fire we chase is one we are destined to extinguish the moment we get too close. In his world, passion needs friction, and love that loses tension loses itself. Nietzsche reminds us, if love is fading, it may be because we got too close to what was never meant to be held. While Nietzsche saw desire as a flame that dies in closeness, Esther Perel sees something far more complex and far more modern. She believes that today's man is not running from love. He is running from what love demands. Not the chase, not the charm, but the daily, vulnerable, exposed intimacy that follows. Modern love asks for presence. And presence is not sexy, it is terrifying. Perel argues that many men are not taught to exist in love, only to perform in pursuit. They've mastered seduction. They know how to captivate. But once the curtains fall and the lights are on, they are asked to do something they were never trained to do. To stay. To stay present when things are no longer exciting. To stay calm when emotions rise. To stay connected when routine replaces novelty. Perel says, we confuse love with ownership and closeness with danger. The modern man often feels that once he has someone, he must also become someone else, someone always available, predictable, responsible. And that feels suffocating. So he pulls back, not because he doesn't care, but because his identity begins to feel consumed by expectation. This is not emotional immaturity. This is emotional illiteracy. We've created generations of men who feel most alive in pursuit, but most imprisoned in partnership. Not because they don't want love, but because they don't understand how to breathe inside it. And the tragedy? Many relationships die not from lack of love, but from the fear that being close will cost them their freedom. Perel reminds us, desire lives in space, in distance, in mystery, and when intimacy becomes total exposure, some will escape to remember who they were before they were seen too clearly. So the question becomes, can you be fully known and still feel free? And today, Esther Perel dares to ask, what if love didn't fail? What if we just never learned how to stay? Nietzsche and Perel stand on the same battlefield, but their weapons are forged from very different truths. Nietzsche believes the flame of desire is fed by distance. To him, the moment you close that gap, the flame begins to starve. Desire is not about connection. It is about separation, a sacred tension between want and fulfillment. He might ask, is she less valuable or just less invisible? Because to Nietzsche, the mystery is the value. What is seen too clearly loses its glow. But Perel doesn't buy this. She believes that modern desire isn't killed by closeness. It's killed by confusion. The man isn't reacting to her availability. He's reacting to his own fear of becoming someone else once love becomes real. Perel would say, he doesn't lose interest in her. He loses himself. This is the core of their clash. Nietzsche sees the tragedy in proximity. Perel sees the tragedy in emotional unpreparedness. He says desire dies when the chase ends. She says desire dies when presence demands emotional maturity. So who's right? Is the woman to remain mysterious to be desired? Or should the man learn to desire through presence, not projection? This isn't just a battle of ideas. It's a battle of identity. Because in one view, the solution is strategy. Be less available. Stay elusive. Maintain the tension. In the other, the solution is evolution. Grow into love. Face the fear. Redefine what it means to want someone deeply. Where do you stand? Is desire sustained by distance or destroyed by fear? Open your apps. Scroll through the profiles. One swipe, one match, one spark, and gone. Desire has never been more instant or more disposable. Modern relationships are no longer defined by love, connection, or even compatibility. They are defined by availability and its absence. Today's culture teaches one thing clearly. What is too easy to reach must not be worth holding. We've turned emotional distance into currency, mystery into power, and availability into weakness. This isn't romantic strategy. This is survival in a world saturated with choice, where attention is limited and gratification is infinite. So what do we see? Men pulling back the moment they feel secure. Women performing detachment to stay desirable. A generation addicted to tension, not connection. Modern masculinity has become performative. Power is no longer about protection or presence. It's about being the one who needs the other less. He doesn't want a partner. He wants to feel like a conqueror every single time. And the moment she stops being a challenge, the illusion of conquest fades. But here's the cruel twist. The woman begins to think she gave too much. That her softness killed his interest. That her presence became her mistake. No, the mistake is believing that availability should be punished. That love must be earned through absence. That only the distant deserve desire. This is the psychology of insatiability. A culture so overstimulated, so saturated, that it has confused emotional nourishment with emotional starvation. And it has a cost. Relationships now die not from betrayal, but from boredom. Not from conflict, but from overexposure. We no longer fall out of love. We scroll out of it. Do you want to be truly desired, or just endlessly chased? Because there is a difference. Desire sees the person. Chase sees the prize. Desire listens. Chase calculates. Desire is brave. Chase is strategic. If you've ever felt someone pull away the moment you opened your heart, you're not alone. You've touched the invisible line between fantasy and reality, between what they wanted from you, and what they didn't know how to handle once they had it. Nietzsche warned us, the flame dies in familiarity. Esther Perel reminded us, closeness feels like danger to the unprepared heart. And here we are, at the center of that contradiction. So we leave you with this final question, not to answer right away, but to sit with in silence. Would you rather be loved for who you are, or for how difficult you are to reach?